Feels like temperatures between 105 and 108 degrees. That is dangerous for anybody. If you're healthy, if you're sick, for
We have
everyone.
a heat advisory in effect until 8 p.m.
It's not just going to be uncomfortable, but potentially dangerous.
Code red, extreme heat alert.
Extreme heat is actually the deadliest natural hazard nationwide.
Researchers working on climate change have identified the McElderry Park neighborhood in East Baltimore as the hottest neighborhood in the city.
This is called an urban heat island effect.
A large reason that cities such as Baltimore experience these bouts of extreme heat has to do with the urban heat island effect. The urban heat island effect is the result of an abundance of heat-absorbing surfaces such as buildings and roads, along with a lack of vegetation, contributing to creating warmer temperatures even through the night when things usually have a chance to cool down. Heat retention in urban areas contributes to a positive feedback loop, which makes it so places like this are significantly warmer than green spaces like this.
Yeah, so the way in which we found them in some of our research here at the lab, we use Landsat data, so it's not really fine, but at least gets at the general understanding of where land surface temperature is higher in some areas than in other areas. Land surface temperature is really just like what's the temperature that's reflecting back to the satellite that it gets at. So it doesn't necessarily measure humidity, which is a big factor as well when we think about like people's perception to heat, but it at least is a good general basic like understanding of what the heat in a certain area is.
Baltimore has a long history of discriminatory housing practices and redlining. In 1910, they had their first law which prohibited black people from buying houses in certain areas. This paved the way for the 1935 redlining done by the HOLC, where they graded each area and district based on their perceived risk. Although redlining is now illegal, we are still feeling its lasting impacts today. People of color make up the majority of the populations of areas that were previously redlined. This means that they are feeling the impacts of UHIs more than any other population in their surrounding areas.
It's really evident when you look at even just tree canopy distribution in certain communities. So if you're interested in kind of looking at where the tree canopy is and then comparing that to the redline data, that's a really quick analysis that will most likely tell you well, trees tend to grow where the money is.
These populations are at higher risk for dehydration, cardiovascular issues, and heat stroke.
When we think about extreme heat, it can impact our nervous system. It's a stress on all of our different kind of like physiological systems. And so when we think about how UHIs can then impact chronic conditions that might be in these areas that are already dealing with exploitation, lack of resources, so when we think of like lack of access to healthcare, food deserts, it just perpetuates, right, the problems.
As climate change progresses, the most important thing we can do is to stay informed. This includes information on what is happening, where, and to whom, but also the things we can do about it.
At the end of the day, the general solutions that we come up with the communities that we work with here at the lab tend to be around green spaces. I think another thing too is just rethinking how we want our cities to be in the future. So one, I think, talking with the communities, really asking what they see as a solution, I think is really important. Why are these communities so impacted? And that goes back to, I think, the redlining data sets. How can we have change over time without, again, pushing out the people who actually can really benefit from increased greenness or, not necessarily dealing with extreme temperatures all day, every day for the entire summer.
Communities can get involved in planting efforts to help increase green spaces in areas that lack them. These green spaces should include trees, flowers, and food-producing plants that create connections within the community while mitigating UHIs. The education aspect of this idea concerns what species are being included. It's important to investigate plant species that are native to the area and drought and heat tolerant.
For those wanting to get involved who find themselves a little bit further from Baltimore, like us, you can consider donating to organizations such as the Baltimore Tree Trust, which has worked since 2008 to plant trees across the city while educating residents on the importance of this issue.